He loved his Mustang more than anything. Every weekend he would spend hours cleaning it, polishing it until it shone under the sunlight. The car was not just a machine to him. It was a piece of his soul. He remembered the day he bought it, how he had saved every penny for years and how proud he felt driving it home for the first time. Now it was parked neatly in his driveway, ready for another day of care and attention. The neighborhood was quiet that morning, with only the soft hum of distant traffic and birds chirping. He liked this calm, the kind that allowed him to focus on the details, wiping each spot carefully, inspecting every inch. His neighbors often watched him from their windows. Some smiled, appreciating the dedication he showed to his car, while others just shook their heads thinking he spent too much time on a vehicle. But he didn't care. For him, it was more than just a car. It was freedom, a way to escape and feel alive. He ran his hand over the hood, feeling the smooth metal, the warmth from the sun. Everything felt perfect, and for a moment he allowed himself to relax, thinking that nothing could ruin this peaceful morning. But the neighborhood was not always so calm. There was always the undercurrent of tension, mostly because of the homeowners association president. The man had a reputation for being strict and controlling. People whispered about him in hushed tones, complaining about rules that seemed trivial, but were enforced with strict precision. He was the kind of man who believed his family was above everyone else. His teenage son, pampered and reckless, often caused trouble but rarely faced consequences. Everyone knew it, and everyone tried to avoid confrontations, including him. He had seen the boy before, speeding through the streets in his father's expensive car, showing off for anyone who would watch. The boy was cocky, always with a smirk, as if the world owed him respect. Today he noticed him again, cruising slowly past the driveway, waving to someone across the street. The boy's car was loud, shiny, and new, a stark contrast to his own Mustang, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the sense of danger that seemed to follow the boy, a feeling that something could go wrong at any moment. He tried to ignore the boy and focused on his Mustang again, running the cloth over the windshield, making sure it sparkled. He enjoyed these moments, the solitude and the sense of pride, but a small knot of unease formed in his stomach. There was always a sense that the peace of the neighborhood was fragile, and with people like the HOA president's son around, that peace could shatter quickly. He shook the thought away, telling himself not to worry, that it was just a normal morning. Neighbors came and went, some greeting him politely, others barely acknowledging his presence. He waved back, returning the gestures with a smile. He liked knowing the people around him, even if he didn't know their stories fully. Community mattered to him, even if the HOA president tried to control it too tightly. He believed in living freely, in enjoying simple pleasures without interference, and his Mustang was the center of that freedom. The boy's car came back around the corner, this time slower, with the music blasting from the stereo. He could see the boy leaning out of the window, laughing with a friend, not paying attention to anything else. His heart sank a little. He knew that careless behavior could lead to accidents. He had seen it before, in small fender benders and scratches on parked cars, and it always left the victims frustrated and helpless. He reminded himself that he could do nothing but hope the boy drove safely. But a small part of him, the part that had always felt cautious, knew trouble was coming. He finished wiping the car, standing back to admire his work. The Mustang looked perfect, gleaming under the morning sun. He felt a surge of satisfaction, proud of his efforts. He leaned against the fence, watching the street, letting the warmth of the day settle over him. It was moments like this that made all the effort worthwhile. He thought about taking the car for a drive later, feeling the engine roar as he pressed the pedal, feeling free and unstoppable. But for now, he was content just to admire it. As he stood there, he noticed movement across the street. It was the HOA president pacing near his own driveway, talking on the phone. The man's expression was stern, serious, and a little intimidating. Even from a distance, he could feel the weight of the man's presence. The HOA president glanced around occasionally, as if surveying the neighborhood, making sure everyone was following the rules. He shook his head slightly, muttering something under his breath before continuing his call. It was a reminder that in this neighborhood, rules were enforced and people were watched. The boy, oblivious to his father's scrutiny, revved the engine and made a sharp turn toward the protagonist's driveway. He immediately recognized the danger. His heart raced and he stepped forward instinctively, waving at the boy, shouting to slow down. But the boy was already in motion, focused on showing off rather than paying attention to the surroundings. Time seemed to slow as he watched the shiny car approach, too close for comfort. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of fear and anger. This was his prized possession, his Mustang, and he couldn't let anything happen to it. He yelled again, but the boy didn't hear him. He ran toward the driveway, hoping to create some distance to get out of the way if necessary. But before he could react fully, the boy's car skidded slightly, tires squealing on the pavement. His stomach dropped. He could see the car inching dangerously close to the Mustang. He froze for a second, the fear of losing everything overwhelming him. In that instant, he realized how fragile life and possessions could be. One careless move, one moment of recklessness, and everything could be destroyed. He braced himself, ready for impact, but somehow, the car regained control and continued past the Mustang, the boy waving to a friend as if nothing had happened. His heart pounded, sweat running down his back. He exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and lingering anxiety. That close call reminded him how unpredictable people could be, and how quickly a peaceful morning could turn into a nightmare. He walked back to his car, inspecting it carefully for any scratches, any damage. Fortunately, it had survived unscathed this time. The boy disappeared around the corner, leaving a cloud of dust and noise behind. The street returned to its calm state, but the tension lingered. He knew it was only a matter of time before the boy's recklessness caused a real problem. He thought about the HOA president, imagining the potential confrontation if anything did happen. The man was powerful, well-connected, and intimidating. Standing up to him would not be easy, but he also knew he couldn't live in fear. He had to protect what was his, and that included his Mustang. He returned to the car, running his hands over the polished surface again, trying to calm his nerves. He reminded himself that today had ended without incident, and that his Mustang was still safe. Still, a small voice in his mind warned him to stay alert, to be cautious. The neighborhood looked peaceful, but appearances could be deceiving. People could be careless, and when that happened, he had to be ready to act. The morning wore on, and sunlight grew stronger, casting long shadows across the driveway. He finished the final touches on the car, checking the tires, the mirrors, and the engine hood. Everything looked perfect. He stepped back and admired his work, feeling a deep sense of pride. For now, at least, the Mustang was safe and he could enjoy a moment of peace. He knew that peace was precious, fragile, and worth protecting. As he cleaned up his supplies and prepared to go inside, he glanced toward the street once more. The boy was gone, the neighborhood calm again, but the memory of the close call stayed with him. He knew that life could change in an instant, that things could go wrong without warning, but he also knew he was ready. He had his Mustang, his passion, and his determination. No matter what challenges came, he would face them with courage, and for now that was enough. The morning, though tense, had reminded him of what he valued most and why he was willing to protect it at all costs. He had barely gone inside when he heard the roar of a car engine again, louder and closer this time. His stomach tightened as he peeked through the window. The HOA president's son was back, his expensive sports car glinting in the sunlight. He was not alone. A couple of friends were in the car, laughing loudly, music blaring. They looked careless, fearless, and reckless in the way only teenagers who are spoiled and untouchable could be. The boy's attention was clearly on showing off, not on driving safely. His heart sank as he watched them slow down near the driveway, the boy's smirk growing wider as if daring someone to challenge him. He knew instinctively that trouble was coming. He ran back outside, shouting at the boy to slow down, to be careful. The words were swallowed by the loud engine and music. He waved his arms, hoping someone would notice, hoping he could prevent a disaster before it happened. The boy glanced briefly but only laughed, pushing the car harder toward the driveway. Panic surged in his chest. He could feel his pulse in his ears, each beat echoing like a drum. His beloved Mustang was in danger. All the care, all the hours of polishing and maintenance could be gone in a single moment. He rushed forward, but there was no time, no space to act. The boy was too fast, too careless, and the moment of impact seemed inevitable. The car skidded slightly as it neared the Mustang, tires squealing on the asphalt. He froze, a mix of fear and disbelief holding him in place. The Mustang gleamed under the sunlight, its perfect finish reflecting the chaos approaching. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally, every second feeling like an eternity. He could see the boy's reckless excitement. the way his hands gripped the steering wheel with arrogance, confident he could control everything. But reality was different. One wrong move, one slip, and the results could be catastrophic. The boy tried to turn sharply, misjudging the space between his car and the Mustang. The screeching of tires filled the air, followed by a loud metallic crunch that made his stomach drop. The Mustang shuddered violently under the impact. Metal scraping, paint scratched, a loud dent forming along the side. He could hardly breathe. His hands shook as he reached out to touch the car, fearing the damage, hoping it wasn't as bad as it looked. But deep down he knew it was serious. His Mustang, his pride, had been hit, and the careless boy seemed oblivious to the consequences. The friends in the car laughed nervously, sensing the sudden tension. The boy quickly shifted the car back, trying to straighten it, his confidence fading for a moment as reality sank in. But instead of admitting fault, he slammed the door, running back inside his house as if nothing had happened. The laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by an awkward silence. He stood frozen, staring at the Mustang, his heart pounding, his mind racing with a mix of anger and helplessness. The car had been a symbol of freedom, of achievement, and now it was damaged by someone else's recklessness. Neighbors started to appear, curious about the noise. Some whispered among themselves, eyes darting nervously toward the boy's house. They knew the family's influence, the power of the HOA president, and many hesitated to speak up. He felt alone, facing not just the damage to his car, but also the weight of confronting a powerful and intimidating family. The Mustang had survived many small scratches and bumps over the years, but this felt different. This was personal, careless, and avoidable. He ran his hands over the dent, feeling the metal crumpled beneath his fingers. He could see the scratches, some deep enough that he knew would need professional repair. His chest tightened with frustration. All the effort he had put into maintaining the car seemed wasted in that moment. But alongside the frustration, a new determination grew. He could not let this go unnoticed, could not allow the boy and his family to think their recklessness was acceptable. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, to think logically about the next steps. He looked toward the boy's house, expecting perhaps an apology, a confrontation, or at least some acknowledgement of what had happened. But there was nothing. Silence. The boy's room curtains were drawn, hiding him from view. It was a small act, but it felt like an insult, a dismissal of responsibility. The anger simmered inside him, mixing with a determination to fight for what was right. He knew it would not be easy, that facing the HOA president would be intimidating, but he couldn't just let it slide. He stepped back, surveying the damage fully. The Mustang still stood proud, but the dent and scratches were impossible to ignore. He thought about how much time and effort had gone into maintaining it, about every early morning and late night spent caring for this car. The thought of losing all that care because of someone else's carelessness was infuriating. He felt a mix of helplessness and resolve. This was a challenge he could not ignore. As he stood there, a few neighbors approached cautiously, some offering sympathetic looks, others whispering advice. "Maybe talk to his parents," one said, clearly nervous. "Be careful," another warned, glancing toward the boy's house. The community had always known about the power dynamics, about the influence of the HOA president and the fear it instilled. But he felt that the truth needed to come out. That responsibility needed to be acknowledged, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. He retrieved his phone, taking pictures of the damage, documenting every scratch and dent. He knew that evidence would be crucial if there was any dispute later. The neighbors watched silently, some nodding in encouragement, others shaking their heads as if saying, "We've seen this before." He felt a strange mix of support and isolation. The neighborhood cared, but everyone knew the family's power, and that made the coming confrontation intimidating. Still, he felt ready. The Mustang deserved justice. Inside, he sat for a moment, running through scenarios. He could confront the boy directly, speak with his father, or involve insurance. Each option had risks, each carried tension, but he knew he could not remain passive. Anger and frustration mingled with clarity. He understood that taking action was necessary. He could feel the Mustang calling for justice, demanding that its care and integrity be defended. Minutes later, the HOA president emerged from his house, noticing the commotion. He walked slowly, surveying the scene with a calculated expression. His presence was heavy, almost oppressive. He stopped near the damaged Mustang, his eyes narrowing slightly, not yet speaking but already assessing the situation. The neighbors seemed to shrink back, leaving him to face the situation alone. He straightened, prepared himself mentally, and stepped forward to confront the man. He knew that honesty, calmness, and evidence would be his strongest allies. "Your son hit my car," he said, his voice steady, though his chest still felt tight. "I have pictures and witnesses. We need to discuss this." The HOA president's eyes flickered, a flash of annoyance visible, but he replied smoothly, almost rehearsed. "I don't see how that could happen. My son wouldn't do something like that. Maybe your car was in the wrong position." The words struck him, a mix of disbelief and frustration. It was exactly what he feared. The shifting of blame, the denial, the attempt to intimidate. He took a deep breath, resisting the urge to raise his voice. He knew the truth was on his side, and he would not be swayed by empty words or intimidation. He showed the photos, explaining the sequence of events, pointing out the evidence clearly. The HOA president's expression hardened, but he could see the tension behind the calm facade. The confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back. Time seemed to stretch as they stood there, neighbor whispers filling the air, the Mustang gleaming between them. The situation was tense, the potential for conflict high, but he held his ground, feeling a mixture of anger, pride, and determination. This was not just about a car. It was about respect, accountability, and standing up for what was right. And as he looked at the damaged Mustang, he knew he was ready for the battle ahead, no matter how difficult it might be. The confrontation with the HOA president quickly escalated. He tried to remain calm, but the man's tone was sharp, authoritative, and dismissive. "I don't think your Mustang was parked properly," the HOA president said, waving a hand as if brushing away the seriousness of the situation. "Maybe you didn't secure it well enough. My son is careful he wouldn't just crash into someone's car." He felt a rush of disbelief. How could the man deny what had happened in front of witnesses, in front of photos, in front of obvious damage? His chest tightened as frustration built, but he knew losing control would only make things worse. He took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "I have witnesses who saw your son driving recklessly. I have photos showing how your son hit my car. I want to resolve this calmly, but the responsibility is yours and your son's." The HOA president's lips tightened, his eyes narrowing. He leaned slightly closer, trying to intimidate him. "You need to be careful with accusations. My son is part of this community. I won't have him blamed unfairly. Maybe you should think about how you present yourself before you accuse someone." The words stung, but he refused to back down. He felt a mix of anger and resolve, realizing that this wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about standing up against someone who thought rules and respect applied to everyone, except their own family. He felt a surge of determination. He had done nothing wrong, and he would not allow them to shift blame onto him. This was his moment to defend not just his car, but his dignity. Neighbors lingered quietly, some watching with curiosity, others clearly wary of the HOA president's reaction. He could sense the tension in the air, the weight of authority pressing down. But he also noticed a few supportive faces, people who understood what had happened and hoped justice would prevail. That small reassurance gave him courage. He spoke again, holding the photos in his hand, pointing out the sequence of events. The scratches, the dent, the angle of the crash, it was all clear and undeniable. The HOA president's expression hardened. He gestured dismissively. "I'll need to speak with my son. I can't resolve anything until I know exactly what happened. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. You need to be patient." Patience felt like a bitter pill. He had spent hours taking care of his Mustang, and now the damage seemed to loom larger every second. He knew waiting could allow the family to manipulate the story, to make it seem like his own carelessness had caused the accident. But he nodded, keeping his calm. "I understand," he said. "But please remember, I have witnesses and photos. This isn't a misunderstanding." The HOA president walked back toward his house, muttering under his breath. The boy peeked from the window briefly, smirking as if mocking him, then disappeared. That small gesture fueled his determination. He would not be intimidated by a child or his powerful parent. The Mustang deserved justice, and he was ready to pursue it. He returned to the driveway, examining the car once more. The dent was deeper than he initially thought, the scratches running along the side. Repairing it would cost time and money, but he refused to let that deter him. This was bigger than just a car. He decided to gather more evidence. He went to neighbors who had security cameras, asking politely if they could provide footage of the incident. Most hesitated at first, clearly aware of the HOA president's influence, but a few agreed, understanding that fairness needed to prevail. He also spoke with those who had seen the boy driving recklessly, taking careful notes of their statements. Each piece of evidence strengthened his case. Each supportive neighbor reminded him that truth could stand against power if handled wisely. Hours passed, and tension continued to build. The boy still did not come forward. It was clear he had no intention of admitting fault, leaving his father to handle the situation. The HOA president returned with a more controlled expression, his tone measured but firm. "I spoke with my son. He says he didn't hit your car. You must have been mistaken." He felt a flush of frustration. How could someone deny reality so easily? But he forced himself to remain calm, knowing that losing control would only give them an advantage. He presented the evidence he had collected, including neighbor statements and security footage. Each fact was delivered clearly and calmly. "This isn't about opinion. This is about what actually happened. The footage shows the accident and the witnesses can confirm it. We can resolve this fairly if you accept the truth." The HOA president paused, scanning the photos, then the statements. His eyes flickered briefly, revealing a hint of unease. He tried to mask it with a dismissive gesture, but the evidence was undeniable. The boy had crashed the Mustang, and now the truth was documented in a way that could not be ignored. He felt a small surge of hope. Maybe justice could be achieved if he remained steadfast. Despite the evidence, the HOA president was not ready to fully admit fault. He suggested involving insurance, framing it as a neutral way to handle the situation. While he knew insurance could help, he also recognized that it might allow the president and his son to delay or manipulate the resolution. He agreed cautiously, knowing that involving insurance was a practical step, but determined to continue gathering support and ensuring accountability. This was not just about financial recovery. It was about principle. The following days were tense. The insurance company required statements, photographs, and detailed accounts. He worked diligently, documenting everything meticulously. He coordinated with neighbors who had seen the accident, ensuring that their statements were recorded accurately. Each phone call and each meeting reinforced his belief that he could stand up to the powerful family, that fairness could be achieved with persistence and truth. The Mustang's damage became a symbol of his fight, a reminder of the need to defend what was right. Meanwhile, the HOA president maintained a calm exterior, but he could sense the growing scrutiny. Other neighbors whispered, some expressing support, others speculating on the outcome. He remained focused, knowing that public perception could influence the family's response. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable, but he drew strength from the process, from knowing that evidence and truth were on his side. Every conversation, every piece of documentation reinforced his resolve. One afternoon, the boy finally emerged, attempting to act casual, pretending as if nothing had happened. He waved at a few friends, showing off his car again. The sight triggered a mix of frustration and determination. He knew that confrontation might be necessary if the boy continued to avoid responsibility. But he chose a measured approach, focusing on documentation and witnesses rather than personal anger. This strategy, he realized, would ultimately be more effective. Anger could cloud judgment, but facts and truth were undeniable. As the days passed, communication with the HOA president became more frequent, each interaction more cautious and calculated. He maintained a calm demeanor, presenting evidence, asking questions, and seeking resolution. The HOA president attempted to maneuver, suggesting compromises that would minimize the boy's responsibility, but he resisted. Compromise without accountability was unacceptable. He knew that standing firm was necessary, that yielding would set a dangerous precedent. The Mustang deserved justice, and he was determined to see it through. Neighbors began to notice his persistence. A few approached him privately, expressing admiration for his courage. "You're handling this well," one said. "It's not easy standing up to someone so powerful." Another added, "We've seen how they operate, but you're doing the right thing." These small gestures of support fueled his determination. He was not alone, and he could feel the community quietly rallying behind him. Even in a neighborhood where fear often kept people silent, truth had allies. The tension continued to build as the HOA president realized that denial and intimidation were not sufficient. The evidence was clear, the witnesses were credible, and his attempts to deflect responsibility were failing. Each interaction became a test of strategy, patience, and resolve. He remained calm, presenting facts and insisting on accountability. The Mustang, damaged but not defeated, stood as a reminder of why he could not back down. Finally, after several days of negotiation and careful documentation, the HOA president reluctantly agreed to take responsibility, at least formally. He promised to cooperate with insurance and repair arrangements. While this did not immediately erase the frustration or anger, it marked a turning point. The boy's reckless behavior had been acknowledged, and the process of repair and accountability had begun. He felt a mix of relief and cautious satisfaction. Justice was not always swift, but persistence and truth could prevail. As he examined the Mustang once more, he reflected on the ordeal. It had been exhausting, stressful, and emotionally taxing, but it had also been a lesson in courage, in standing up for oneself, and in the importance of evidence, patience, and persistence. The HOA president and his son had underestimated him, and he had shown that accountability could not be avoided, even by power and influence. The Mustang, though damaged, symbolized resilience, pride, and the fight for fairness. And he knew that, no matter what challenges remained, he had proven to himself that he could face them with determination and integrity. He woke up that morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The Mustang had been damaged. The HOA president and his son had been difficult, but he had gathered evidence and witnesses. Today, he would take stronger steps to ensure justice. He had learned that patience alone was not enough. Careful action, documentation, and communication were necessary to make sure the truth could not be twisted or ignored. First, he went around to neighbors who had seen the accident. He asked them again if they could provide detailed accounts, clarifying times, actions, and observations. Most were hesitant at first, worried about the HOA president's influence, but he reassured them calmly that their statements would be used fairly and would protect the truth. Slowly, they began to share what they saw, adding valuable details to the story. Each statement strengthened his position. He realized that the power of the community could balance the influence of one family if the truth was clear and united. Next, he focused on the security footage from nearby houses. Some cameras captured the driveway and the street clearly. He obtained copies, checking every angle, every frame. The footage showed exactly what happened, confirming the witnesses' accounts and proving the sequence of events beyond doubt. Watching the video, he felt a mixture of relief and determination. Relief that the truth was documented, and determination to use it wisely to ensure accountability. He prepared a folder with all the evidence, photographs of the damage, witness statements, security footage, and a detailed timeline of events. It was more than just documentation. It was a story presented in a clear and factual way. He wanted to ensure that when he faced the HOA president and the insurance company, there could be no room for manipulation or denial. This careful preparation made him feel in control for the first time since the accident. When he approached the HOA president again, he remained calm and composed. He showed the folder, explaining each piece of evidence methodically. "This is what happened," he said. "These are the witnesses and the footage. The responsibility lies with your son, and we need to address the damage and the consequences properly." The HOA president glanced through the materials, his expression unreadable. There was no denying the clear evidence, but he tried to maintain authority. "I still think there might be some misunderstanding," he said cautiously. "We need to review everything carefully before making any decisions." He nodded, understanding that the man would resist full accountability for as long as possible. But he was ready. He explained that the evidence spoke for itself, and that delaying the resolution would only complicate matters further. He remained polite and firm, making it clear that the goal was fairness and justice, not conflict or revenge. He could see the HOA president's carefully constructed facade starting to crack, the pressure of undeniable proof weighing on him. Meanwhile, he kept neighbors informed, creating a quiet network of support. Some offered additional footage. Some offered to be witnesses in case of further disputes. This community involvement gave him confidence, showing that even a powerful family could not overshadow collective truth. Each supportive gesture reminded him that he was not alone, and that standing up for what was right had broader support than he initially realized. The insurance company was the next step. He submitted all the evidence, explaining the sequence of events, the witnesses, and the footage. The adjuster was thorough but fair, reviewing each document and confirming the damages. He felt a sense of empowerment. While the insurance process could be slow, it was impartial, and the evidence ensured that fairness would be upheld. This was not about revenge. It was about righting a wrong and ensuring that accountability was recognized. During this time, he also reflected on his approach. He realized that calmness, patience, and evidence were his strongest tools. Emotions could cloud judgment, but facts and careful presentation could not be ignored. This understanding gave him confidence and allowed him to face the HOA president without fear. He had learned that even in situations where power and influence seemed overwhelming, truth and persistence could prevail. After several days of review, the insurance company confirmed the damages and the responsibility of the HOA president's son. The process began for the Mustang to be repaired. The news brought relief, but he knew the confrontation with the HOA family was not yet over. They had to accept responsibility publicly, at least within the neighborhood, to prevent future incidents. He prepared to address this tactfully, understanding that pride and reputation could be as important as financial repair in resolving the situation. He spoke to the HOA president once more, calmly explaining that repair arrangements were being made through insurance and that accountability needed to be acknowledged. The president's tone shifted, less confident now, recognizing that further resistance would only harm his image. He agreed reluctantly, signaling the start of the resolution. The boy remained in the background, quiet, perhaps learning a lesson in accountability for the first time. The Mustang's repair was a slow process, but he visited the shop regularly, checking progress. Each visit reminded him of the importance of diligence and care, not just in maintaining the car, but in maintaining principles. Watching the work being done, seeing the dents removed and the scratches repaired, he felt satisfaction. The car would be restored, but more importantly, the principles of accountability and fairness were being reinforced. Through this process, he also gained insight into human behavior. The HOA president's initial denial, the son's reckless actions, and the reactions of neighbors all highlighted the challenges of dealing with power and influence. But he also saw courage, truth, and integrity emerge. He realized that standing up for oneself was not just about confrontation, but about preparation, patience, and persistence. Neighbors began to notice the change. Some whispered about the family finally facing consequences. Others expressed quiet admiration for his courage and strategy. The story of the accident became a lesson within the neighborhood, a reminder that recklessness and denial could be challenged with evidence and persistence. It reinforced a sense of fairness and accountability in the community. One afternoon, as he stood near the repaired Mustang, reflecting on the journey, he realized that the ordeal had strengthened him. The car, once damaged, now gleamed brighter than before, not just a symbol of freedom but of resilience and justice. He understood that life often presented unexpected challenges, and that standing firm with integrity was essential. The experience had been difficult, but it had also been empowering. The boy and the HOA president gradually accepted the consequences, at least formally, and he could see subtle changes in their behavior. The boy became more cautious, less inclined to show off recklessly, while the president recognized that power could not shield irresponsibility. The neighborhood slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but with a renewed awareness of accountability and respect. As he drove the Mustang for the first time after repairs, feeling the engine's roar and the smoothness of the ride, he smiled. It was more than just a restored car. It was a victory of truth, persistence, and courage. He realized that challenges like these were opportunities to learn, to strengthen resolve, and to demonstrate integrity. The ordeal had tested him, but he had emerged stronger, more confident, and more aware of the importance of standing up for what was right. He parked the Mustang back in the driveway, polished and perfect once more, and looked around the neighborhood. Life was returning to normal, but he knew that the experience had left a lasting impression. The accident, the confrontation, and the pursuit of justice had become a story of resilience, a reminder that even when faced with powerful opposition, truth, preparation, and persistence could prevail. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the repaired Mustang, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. knowing that he had fought fairly, acted wisely, and protected what he valued most.